Good evening, and welcome back to another all-studded event of the All In podcast on the All In Network. This is the real to jump off. You know how we do, and it's your host coming back. I missed you last week, people, but I'm back in the house. I'm your host, Walt the Damager.
And this is at Rob Cooper Jr. on Instagram. What's going on, family? Yeah, we
Oh
missed you.
man, listen, it's lovely, man. We got a lot to talk about. But first, I want to, send thank you to the super producer Elijah Cooper, whom is your son,
Yes,
that does a
sir.
remarkable job behind the scenes, and he held it down as a true soldier would. Last weekend's episode was, like I said, phenomenal, very informative. I liked that editorial piece he wrote on Kamala. Uh, the information that was submitted on the platform last week. Oh man, it goes without saying, you guys did a tremendous job.
Yes, sir. It was an outstanding. It was an outstanding show. And again, we missed you, but and Elijah did, the best he could to kind of hold down and wear your shoes for a week. And again, just going back on that, yes, Elijah wrote an article really setting the record straight on a lot of misinformation that's out just in general in politics, but particularly targeted to and towards Kamala Harris. And I think the sad part about it is most of the misinformation is actually from our own people. I think we talked about this, where Tupac had mentioned this years ago, talk about America eats its own. And I would say that it just within the Black community, we just have a poor history of eating our own, and we're going to get into a couple of topics today, speaking to that, talking about hip hop and politics, talking about Ice Cube, the controversy that just has come up. But before we get into that, I just want to give folks, we do have an election that's currently going on. No longer are we, looking towards election day for the polling and people to go vote. I actually voted last week in York County, and Pennsylvania is being one of the states that you can vote early now via mail-in ballot or early voting, depending on where you live. You can actually go to your election. You can go to all your elections. Offices, government offices, or you can go to a satellite office. I know in Philadelphia, our high school, our alma mater, Roxborough High School, in Philadelphia, northwest section of Philadelphia, is one of the satellite, polling places. And I think last I heard there was a line around Ridge Avenue in Roxborough, which
Yeah,
which is huge.
yeah, I happened to see that myself driving through there the other day.
Yeah, so everywhere everywhere we're seeing, huge lines. And right now, just looking, if we go to 538 .com, who again, Nate Silver and his team over there of analytics, they do quite a bit. This is their bread and butter, politics, but for the last maybe 10, 15 years. And then they've actually delved off into sports analytics and things like that. I use their site quite a bit, particularly when I'm looking for probabilities in the NFL or NBA outcomes, when I'm looking to lay some money and win some money playing sports betting, or looking for my favorite fantasy lineup. A lot of times they're a good site to get some good insight, because they're all strictly data, and a lot of they even do a lot of journalism over there. But all their journalistic reports, whether it be sports, whether it be politics, it's all based off of data. And you guys who've known me or follow me on Facebook or Instagram, or in our All In Politics political group on Facebook. If you're not, I encourage you to join our group on Facebook. We are the All In Politics group. It's a private group, but just hit us up and we'll make sure that we'll allow you to come on in and join in. And we have some interesting discussions. But looking at the screen right now, according to 538, as of today, today is October the 17th. Biden is currently favored to win the elections. He has an 87% chance of winning the election. Donald Trump has 12%. Now, as I mentioned last week when Elijah and I were on, a lot of folks, particularly those who are Biden supporters, get a little nervous when they see those type of numbers, come at them, because gives them kind of like those flashbacks of 2016 when Hillary had such a lead. I think Hillary had even a higher percentage. I think at this time, I think she was had a 91% chance of defeating Donald Trump. And of course, we all know what happened, that nightmare of 11/9, where Donald Trump in the last 3 weeks of the election was able to not only close the gap, but ultimately defeated Hillary Clinton. But if we look at another data site, the U.S. election projections site, we look at that. This is another area that I actually have been following, because that's where those are not opinions. These are actual. There's actual data on this site, and as you can see, 26 million American voters have voted already in roughly around 40 states. And as we scroll down, that you look right where Elijah has it at. When you scroll down, you can see where the Democrats, Republicans, minor parties, and no party affiliation. 16 states have already reported or have chosen to be transparent with their data, just to kind of give you an idea where things are going. And as you can see, the Democrats have close to a little over 5 million folks, actually close to 6 million voters that have already returned. And they're returning their ballots at about a 25% ratio. The Republicans have about 2.5 million folks have voted, which is about a return rate of about 19.2. And then, of course, you look at the rest of the group. I'll just take the no party affiliation. Basically, they're independents, returning their ballots at a rate of 14.9, basically 15%, and 2 million of those ballots have been returned. So when you look at those numbers and you see that Donald Trump has a 12% chance of winning, very similar to 4 years ago. The biggest difference that I see here, although of course nothing's in the bag yet, but the difference is we weren't even close to these numbers 4 years ago. I think many states are reporting. I think at this time, you go back, to 2016. On October the 19th, I believe the early voting count was about 2 million, maybe. And I know for a fact, even in Pennsylvania, where close to 500,000 folks have been voting. In fact, a lot of people haven't even received their ballots yet. They're still sending out ballots. That's how many ballots that they have in the backlog that they have in ballots. Pennsylvania has 500,000 folks already responded, and the bulk of those returned applications return ballots are coming from Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, which have traditionally been Democratic stronghold. So it appears, this number that we showed here nationwide is pretty much consistent. If we clicked on any of those states, all the states are consistent, where you see pretty much the Democrats are returning their ballots at basically almost a 2-to-1 ratio to Republicans. And I think there's a couple of factors that have to do with that. Number one is Donald Trump. When he came out about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, and really started to stoke fear into the electoral process. And I think that was the first glimpse that we got of him, knowing that he was probably in trouble, looking beyond the actual election to try to get into office via a more undemocratic way. I'm just going to come out and say, try to steal the elections, by saying, we want to circumvent the election process. And we just want to throw it straight into the courts, where we have the advantage, where we have more conservative judges. So basically, to hell with the people. We don't care what you're saying. We don't care that you're going out there waiting in line, 10, 11 hours in some cases that we've seen in Georgia and in Texas. We don't really care about that. We don't give a damn about that, because no matter how hard you try to remove me from the office, I have the circuit courts and ultimately the Supreme Court backing me up, and is going to basically keep me in power. So that's
Right.
what we're seeing right now, Walt. It's interesting, where we're at in this day of a so-called democracy.
Well, the other, I like to piggyback off what you said. The other thing as well, when we were speaking earlier in the electoral process, around August, I'll say the end of July, when they started tossing around the rhetoric that the ballots were being tampered with and the mail was being dumped out. They was finding Trump's information tossed or discarded in these different, unidentified places. That should have struck into the Americans' heartstrings like, all right, what's really happening?
Right.
And what was happening is they wanted you to know that they was implanting subconsciously a narrative
That's right.
that because the numbers is so great,
That's
because
right.
the early turnouts was pointing in the direction of the Democrats. Like usually the Republicans either win by cheating or hoping for low voter turnout. So the ideology behind it all was to, okay, let's start the narrative early to let them know that this election may be a fraud based off the ballots. And then we need to find out if these people are alive, dead, if they double voting. Because remember, it was even earlier in August when remember Trump told them to go out there and vote twice.
Yes. Yes. In Florida.
Right. So that alone lets you know that that's tactics that was already being used that he exposed. But I think that went over a lot of people's head and they didn't gravitate towards what he was saying.
Yes, and another thing. Speaking, let's stay on Florida a little bit. If you recall, about a month and a half ago, when he was giving out misinformation about the mail-in ballots, he
Right.
actually said there was one state that he said, "I encourage you guys to vote in," and that was Florida, right?
Exactly.
So Florida is actually leading the calls on the mail-in ballots and early voting. I believe. Don't quote me on this, but I think they have the highest vote turnout right now.
Right.
And they're over 2-1. I think they're like 3-1 Democrat there, and it's so
Wow.
funny because he said a month and a half ago. He said, if you want to pull up the Florida numbers, Elijah, with the 2.4 million people have voted already in Florida, and it's interesting because that smells trouble for Donald Trump, and the reason why Donald Trump said that it's okay to vote by mail in Florida was because they had a great governor in Ron DeSantis. We all know, just by the way he's handled COVID, that he's not a great governor. In fact, he's to the contrary, a terrible governor. I'm just gonna come out and say it. It's like that. But it's so funny. Not only we all knew that he's a terrible governor, but it's funny. Last night at a rally in Florida, Trump said, if basically, I'm paraphrasing, if we lose Florida, it's time to fire Ron DeSantis. So it's funny how it's pretty much has backfired on him. Now I guess the mail-in ballot thing that he thought was such a great idea about a month and a half ago, and he saw close to 2.5 million people have come out and voted already in Florida with roughly 3 weeks left till election day. It seems like the president has a change in heart. And by the way, him being down by 7 to 9 points in Florida doesn't help that opinion either. I just thought that was real interesting that you brought that piece up, Walt.
Well, there's a couple times he had Freudian slips. I mean, even with the presidential debate with Biden last week, when he had said stand back and stand down. And then it was another one. I don't know if Elijah has the footage where we can subject it into this conversation, but he told his base on national TV to vote and put their ballots in November 28th.
Yeah, I
Like,
remember.
how
Yeah.
asinine is that for
Yes,
you
yes.
to say something like that and everybody knows the elections is on the 3rd?
Yeah, he actually did that in 20. He had that slip up in 2016 as well. He did the same thing.
Right.
So I generally like to tell folks that as well. Like I say hey, if you are, because I don't have the biggest faith in the mailing process, but I never had real faith in the U.S. Postal Service. I guess I look at it like this: if I'm sending you a birthday card, I'm probably going to drop it in the mailbox. But if I'm sending you a check, or I'm looking to receive a check from you, yeah, I'm either going to tell you to go straight to the post office or FedEx that bad boy to me, where we can get a signature with it, just to secure that delivery. And I think something like voting is just too important to trust it, in a mailbox. I mean, if you can, take it. The best option, and I'll just say this: the best option that you should do with your mail-in ballots, if you can, get it to the actual electoral office, your county election offices, with whatever in your city that you reside to. That's the best. The second option would be those drop boxes. If your state has official election boxes, drop those down. Those are pretty safe. I know the one in York County, there's a security guard next to it, and it's also cameras to make sure that no funny business is going down there. But if you're a Trump supporter and you plan on voting for Trump, yeah, you should just put it in the mailbox, the regular mailbox, and or just show up and stand in line for 12, 13 hours on election day. But if you're looking to get rid of Trump, it would behoove you to take heed to those suggestions that I just gave you.
Exactly. And I mean, even to expound on that, which gives us a segue into being informative and understanding the electoral process, and the three branches of government, things of that nature. One has to be educated, and if you don't know about the processes, it will behoove you to investigate, do your research. And for those that don't, that's why we have this invention that they called hip hop, that will introduce us to those things that some of us novice individuals can find out about, and become educated on. I know earlier in the 70s and early 80s, and a rap that I can recall that brought attention to the mainstream was The Message by
That's right.
Grandmaster Flash and Furious
And the
Five.
Furious Five.
Right. So with groups pioneered such as themselves, it gave the urban American youth information as to what's going on the political landscape, the social landscape, and environmental landscape. So those things helped us out as people of color, to be introduced to a world that was usually cut off from us.
That's a great point, and we're gonna go all. And since you went there, let's kind of stay there with it, because that's how us being black people, and particularly African Americans who were brought over here as slaves here in these United States. One of the ways that we were able to stay connected was through poetry, and rhymes and riddles and things like that, fables. That's how we kind of kept our story alive, right? Because we all the points of our educational system really cut off our history. So that's kind of like storytelling was the way that our ancestors were able to keep us connected to our roots in Africa. And at some point, obviously, the oppressor began to understand that and start to cut that off. But we communicated, through music, poetry, and believe it or not, even dance. Folks don't understand that, but just certain movements was a way that we communicated, and the way we kind of rolled. In fact, I believe Harriet Tubman, when she was rowing the Underground Railroad, they use gospel hymns, way in the water, those type of things, that kind of meant, that's right. That meant, show up at the water, tonight, God's going to trouble the waters, show up, at 3:00 or whatever, at the water, so that we can, make this break towards freedom. So, and now bringing it, fast forwarding it back to hip hop, we kept that, that energy alive to keep us educated on what's going on in the world. And I believe Chuck D, from Public Enemy, who really was the first rap group, even though, you know, I heard the message before that, but they were the ones that kind of, and maybe because of, you know, kind of like the state of my life, I was, you know, a sophomore in college at the time,
Mhm.
in 1987, you know, they were the first ones that kind of brought it home to me and say, wow, the aha moment that, you know, hip hop is or is and can be, you know, political. And he actually kind of broke it down, I believe, on a interview, I believe, with Mimi Brown on WDAS, and he said, you know, how, you know, hip hop was pretty much the black CNN back in the 80s.
Right.
You know, that's how we were getting our stories. You know, they were doing their pieces, and like you mentioned, though, but when you want to kind of take it to the next level, you have to be well researched and have a great understanding of what what you're trying to do. You have to have a good understanding of politics, policies, and procedures and things like that before you want to step into that realm. As we can see now, as Ice Cube and Kanye West have found out the hard way. Um,
Right.
they you know, and let's just work backwards here. Let's talk about Ice Cube. Um, you know, again, what he wrote on when he wrote on paper, you know, it all sounds good. But was this vetted? Do you know how much money's in the treasury? Do you know, this country's, you know, you're asking for X amount of dollars, but do you know that, you know, is that even available? Um, you know, everything has to be vetted. Everything. That's why we have three branches of government. You know, it's not the perfect system, but that's how democracy, you know, works. So I think, you know, writing a list of demands and going to a politician and say, hey, we want this, that, and the other. I mean, that sounds nice, and it makes you sound smart on Instagram. You know, say, hey man, that Ice Cube is pretty smart for a rapper, you know. But
Mhm.
when, as you can see, once you get it into the hands of the actual policymaker or lack thereof of Donald Trump, you see how foolish it looks. You know, you put your policy into the hands of a clown, and you're the one that ends up getting clowned.
Right. Now, to play devil's advocate, we as Americans do need to push our politicians more to do more, because a lot of them don't cater to the wills of the consistency or or the people. What they do is they cater to the lobbyists and the higher interest groups, and it
Mm-hmm.
knocks the middleman down. So I understand where Ice Cube attempted to try to take it, but at the same time, he needs to, or what he needed to do was when he wanted to incorporate his plan and get it placed on legislative floors and all that other stuff, he should have made sure that that plan coincided with what he actually gave them. They took his plan. They took his plan, which was the contract with Black America, called it the Platinum Plan, and in actuality, it turned out to be the Dollar Store Plan because nothing that he gave them was incorporated into that plan that they created, and it went against the norm. So it looks like Ice Cube was trying to, be played, in which he was played, but at the same time, he should have had a more assertive stance in ensuring that what he was asking for, uh, in regards to the African American population, it should have been instilled with full intent that it was going to be executed.
Exactly. And you know, it's just funny as we talk about, you know, Public Enemy. You know, kind of going into that realm. And I threw out an example early on in our All In Politics Facebook group. Again, that's All In Politics Facebook group. Make sure you look us up and you know, apply to come into the room. But I said that about Cory Booker, right? Imagine Cory Booker, who's a United States senator. Excuse me, Senator Cory Booker. Let me get it. You know, give his credentials and his credit due to what it is. But imagine, you know, Cory Booker trying to do a hip hop song, you know, and he goes into the studio. Obviously, he has no experience in hip hop, and he goes into the studio, and because he wrote a nursery rhyme, and maybe put a beat, you know, next to it, a nice sound beat, because we could all do that and go, you know, that's not gonna go over well. People gonna call him a clown. You know, he's unqualified. What is Cory Booker doing? You know, and he might mess around and lose an election, right? Because he's gonna, you know, possibly destroy his brand. That's the same thing, with hip hop artists. Ice Cube, kind of stay in your lane. That's all we're saying. We're not saying that your policy or your opinion that you wrote out was a bad ideal, but you got to understand the process, and I think you know that's where Ice Cube is lacking with this. And quite frankly, he ended up clowning himself, because this is kind of like, my opinion. This is what I saw what happened. I remember he had his Instagram rant, and he said, "Hey, let's. I think what are we getting out the deal?" He said this after the Democratic convention. He said, "What's in it for us? What's in it for us, for black people?" And I tell you what's in it. I have this plan. I want to speak with the Democrats and the Republicans. So there was news out there that the Biden camp reached out to him, and they had a discussion with him. Of course, we'd never really heard the outcome of that. He was silent, for a while, and then about a month and a half later, we see Trump in Atlanta, Georgia, speaking to a predominantly black audience, rolling out this $500 billion platinum plan. And at that time, and Walt, please correct me, at that time, he didn't mention where he got this from. What was the source of this? He presented it as if Donald Trump presented it as if this was a program that he came up with, or an ideal that he
from
came
his
up with.
administration, right?
Correct, from his administration. And when it fell on deaf ears and the black community, it backfired on it, they said, "Well, what the heck is this? This is trash. You can't even get a second stimulus package to the American people who lost 50 million jobs were lost. Over 200,000 lives were lost on the coronavirus. You can't even figure out how to get us a stimulus package done, let alone $500 billion." And then what does Donald Trump do? Through one of his campaign workers, he pretty much threw Ice Cube under the bus and say, "Oh, well, this wasn't my idea. I got this idea from Ice Cube." And now Ice Cube is now playing defense. And I'm just going by this is not what I'm saying, but this is what I'm reading on the internet. Now people calling Ice Cube a clown, people calling him a sellout. I've heard people say they want to remove his playlist from streaming services. For what? You know what I mean? Why attach your brand to this dude? You know what I mean? Ice Cube, just last year, you came out with a song. In fact, it was one of our opening songs of our podcast, maybe last year. "Arrest the President." So how we go from "Arrest the President" to you being now 18 days before elections, your brand is tied to Donald Trump. I never had dinner with the president. That's what you told us, Ice Cube. You set the parameters. So my friend, man, unfortunately, you're gonna have to eat this one.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't able to articulate the contrast. I know he was on Roland Martin's show the other night, and he was fumbling a little bit. He really couldn't compare the contrast, whereas Martin was trying to have him, side by sidebar it and show where Cube's plan was articulated in the new plan, the Black Economic Empowerment Platinum Plan. Like that right there within itself is the derogatory, moniker to try to placate the black community.
Mm-hmm.
So then he was on Como, sorry, the other night, and he still had trouble articulating, but he was a little bit better. I think that was last night than he was the previous night, because it just looked like a horrible showing for somebody that creates something and you can't speak about the product.
Right. Well, this podcast is brought to you by the All In Network. Don't forget to head over to allinnetwork.net to find all the other podcasts, including the All In Podcast, Rain and Bliss Podcast, Real Deal Radio, and of course, All In Politics. And we can't forget also that our newest podcast, which came on about a month ago, the Beast Gaming Podcast. All of your information and needs are right here with us on allinnetwork.net. And also, You can catch all these shows either by audio on your favorite podcast platforms. If you don't go to allinnetwork.net, you can catch it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or whatever your favorite podcast platform will be. Or you could just simply go over to YouTube. And Walt, we missed you last week, but when they go over to YouTube, what should they do?
You know what you do when you need to do when you do it. You go to that button, man. You get happy, jump up and down, turn around 360 degrees, slam that subscribe. Nope, nope. Let's take it back. You're going to smash that subscribe button, baby boy.
That's right. And don't forget to like our show and as well as all the other shows too. So like and subscribe or smash that like and subscribe button when you go over to YouTube. Well, man, again, this has been a
How they say it back in the day when you said when you smash that subscribe button, yeah, I mean.
nah, man, that's that Philly thing right now. And our Philly audience will get with that. Those in Birmingham, Alabama, will bring you up to speed. Just stay on and stay with us. Go
we'll
to
put
all
you
right.
we'll put
Go
you on the game.
Right. Go to allinnetwork.net to make sure you don't miss any of the shows. Well, again, this has been another action-packed All In Politics podcast. Well, man, won't you bring us home?
So, like I said, once again, it's been another great episode brought to you by Walt the Damager and Rob Cooper on another eventful day. We would like to encourage everybody to go out there and vote if you haven't done so already. Make sure your ballots get in. Make sure you put them in that first envelope, which is the safety envelope, and then place it into the big ballot and envelope so that way your vote will count appropriately. We don't want to get anybody's information thrown away, tossed out, and not counted. This is your voice. This is your time to show up and show out. So, with that being said, we thank you for your viewership and your listenership, and we promise to always keep it grassroots and bring everything that's not known to those that don't have a voice. We are the voice of the voiceless. And with that being said, I guess, Rob, we can say like we always do it this time.
That's right.
Peace.
Peace.